We have a first timer with us today on the LVEI video series that we do. Stephen Stubbs, local attorney. Steve, what kind of law do you normally practice here in Vegas?
Civil rights law.
Civil rights, constitutional stuff?
Yeah, constitutional law, civil rights. It's basically, I'm one of Metro's biggest legal critics. When Metro does something wrong, I'm there to stand up and raise my hand and say, hey, you can't do that, take it to court. That's my main deal.
And that's why I reached out to get you here today to talk with this little bit of a fiasco, a lot of misunderstanding. And what we're talking about is recently Judge Goodman in Justice Court had a case where there was a defendant came before him and he did post bail. The guy actually posted a surety bond and he was to be released from jail through one of the electronic monitoring programs. And Sheriff McMahill stepped in and said, stop, no, don't. Help me out with the blanks on that one.
Okay, so first of all, this could have been handled so much better, right? Because when Sheriff McMahill rejected Eric Goodman's or Judge Goodman's order, he just rejected it. He didn't explain very well.
Yeah.
He didn't explain what we're about to talk about. He just basically said no. And you know, when a judge says something and you just tell him no, and you don't really explain it well, then of course the judge is going to push back.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this drama is because of lack of communication in the beginning. And I don't know if Sheriff McMahill knew or didn't know the law around it. I think he probably just thought, hey, this is what I think is right, and so this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Without thinking about the legalities and let the lawyers figure that out later, right? If he would have figured that out first, then he could have gone to Judge Goodman and said, hey, there are these reasons, and this is why I'm not going to obey your order. And I think that, look, I know Judge Goodman. If they would have done that, I think Judge Goodman would have looked at it. He's always been super reasonable. He's one of the best judges we have, that's the biggest tragedy of this whole thing. He's one of the best judges we have because he holds police accountable. He really goes above and beyond. When you submit something in writing, he reads it.
Yeah.
Right? He's fantastic as a judge. And so because of lack of communication, he's been cast in a bad light that I don't think is fair.
And that's kind of why I wanted to do this and just kind of lay it out. You know, he's been around for a long time, Judge Goodman. He's, you know, a lot of people say a lot of good things about him, more good than I've ever heard bad. And, you know, I was in the bail bond business for 20 something years, and I kind of get to know the judges, whether personally or through reputation, more than most people in town. And we put an article up on the LVEI page, and the community's out for blood with this guy. They want him, you know, off the bench, disbarred, fired, disrobed is one of the
totally not fair.
Like, I mean, they're just
totally
crucifying him because he got in an argument or a disagreement with the sheriff.
And there was miscommunication, and there was all these things, and now everybody's kind of ran with it online, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
Can I explain to you kind of how this is?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have three co-equal branches of government in the state. It's very similar to the federal, okay? We have the legislative, we have the judiciary, and then we have the executive. Okay, so the sheriff is an executive office. Okay, the sheriff is part of the co-equal. They're both equal branch of executing the laws of the state of Nevada. Okay, then there's Judge Goodman, who's clearly in the judicial. So they're both even, and they're both elected. So they're elected officials that are granted specific powers and specific duties. Okay. And so what happened here is there was a disagreement on how these duties needed to come to pass. Okay. But if you break it down, the judge has the duty to set bail and the terms and conditions of the bail.
And a reasonable bail.
Yes. In fact, the Nevada Supreme Court recently has struck down large bail amounts. You have to give a bail amount that someone can possibly make.
Yeah.
And so the public criticisms of, oh, wait a second, why $25,000 bail? Well, that's because the Supreme Court mandated it.
Yeah.
So Judge Goodman didn't really have a choice there. he had to set something that that was reasonable that the person could get.
Yeah.
Right. Because the charges, they weren't murder, right? They're serious charges, but it's not murder, right?
And even a $25,000 bail, that sometimes isn't just easy to do.
Right.
You know, when you talk to like a bail bondsman, you know, they do want a little bit of collateral. They do want something to secure that $25,000, especially on a defendant that's got a history of failure to appears.
Right.
So even at $25,000, it's still not very easy to obtain. That's a lot of money, especially in today's times. Like that's a lot. It's still pretty high in today's local bail market.
Right, but with the Nevada Supreme Court rules and their decisions, I don't see how we can criticize Judge Goodman for the amount of bail.
Correct, exactly.
But he did say, okay, I'm setting max bail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put him on the sheriff's monitoring program, okay? Now, this is where Judge Goodman's power turns into the sheriff's power.
Gotcha.
Because Judge Goodman gets to set the bail and then say, hey, this guy needs to be monitored. However, the sheriff is also elected by the people. And the sheriff has his officers, he has his programs. And the sheriff is elected to make decisions about his programs. So the sheriff looked at this guy and said, hey, wait a second, we can't monitor him.
Yeah.
So the sheriff refused to put him on the sheriff's program. Now there's court programs also. The sheriff's program is actually more intensive, right? There's court programs, but the courts don't have all the officers that the sheriff has, right? The court doesn't have the system. So Judge Goodman wanted the higher house arrests monitoring, right? And there's the court system that's the lower monitoring. So he tried to push it to the higher, and I think he did the most he could do, right, under the circumstances. Right?
A lot of times with those cases too, they get there, you know, this is from my experience on the bail bond side of it, they get to this point and then they don't pass, you know, the next step, whether their house isn't up to par, or they don't have a real address. There's other things too that can prevent that from happening. So it's not that uncommon for it to get to that point, get a bond posted, and then not get released.
Right. So that happens as well. We never got there, right? Because the sheriff said, no, he doesn't go in my program. The sheriff has that right. He's elected, he has his officers, he has his programs, he's elected to make that decision, right? Then Judge Goodman could then say, oh, okay, well then we can put him on the court's program, which is actually what the district court judge did, right? Which is the smaller program. Now, if he had been on the more intensive program, then the cops could have really watched him better, right? But because he was on the smaller program, he just gets arrested right afterwards because it's less restrictive.
All the stuff, all the hoopla, all the media craze, and then the guy gets out and he goes right back to jail.
Right. But you see, if the sheriff would have dedicated some officers and would have accepted him into the program, that might not have happened. But still, I mean, the sheriff has the right and has the discretion. He's elected into this position to actually say what happens within his program. And interestingly, the legislature, in duties of the sheriff, in the Nevada revised statutes, specifically says that the sheriff has to obey the directions and commands of the district court. It does not say the justice court or the municipal court.
And so that's the highest criminal court, right?
Yeah.
District, justice, municipal, right?
Right. And so actually the sheriff did the correct thing when he filed a petition with the Nevada Supreme Court on this issue, because it is a constitutional issue, a Nevada Constitution issue. Executive branch, judicial branch, there's kind of this spot. Where's the line? Okay, so sheriff did the correct thing, and the sheriff appealed it to the district court, and the district court actually, I believe, made the correct decision. And said, look, the sheriff doesn't have to do that, and ordered this defendant released on the electronic monitoring for the court system, which is less restrictive, right? So all this happened. Now, we just explained kind of what happened and why and where the powers are. What would have happened if Sheriff McMahill's attorneys showed up and said, look, Judge, here's the situation, and really explained it and said, you know, the way we see it, we're co-equal branches, this is going on. If they would have come to Judge Goodman like that, things would have been different. I
Yeah.
know Judge Goodman, but they didn't. They just kind of said, no, you can't make us.
They just kind of blindsided him
Right.
and tried to do like a muscle
Right.
move. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, the way this was handled and the communication, I just think it wasn't handled in the best way.
Yeah.
Right. Although I believe the sheriff is correct. I think he's correct. But I mean, anytime you have two co-equal branches of government and you're not really communicating the best, you're not working the best together.
Yeah. I mean, the online community's in a rage over the whole thing. It's
Right.
kind of, but you read a lot of it and you realize they're mad, but they don't even know why they're mad, and they're mad for like the wrong reasons.
Right.
So hopefully this will clear it up a little bit. We'll get this out and hopefully it'll just let people calm down. And I don't think there's any reason to, call for Judge Goodman to be thrown out or kicked off the bench or any of that. I think it's just a misunderstanding that got too publicized.
Right. And
Yeah.
Judge Goodman has to abide by the Nevada Supreme Court's rulings.
Yeah.
Right. And so before those rulings, I saw Judge Goodman give huge bail amounts in situations like this.
Yeah.
But if the Nevada Supreme Court comes down and says, yeah, you're not allowed to do that because the presumption of innocent, this guy, even though he's been arrested 36 times,
Yeah.
for this charge in front of Judge Goodman, he has the constitutional presumption of innocence. And that's something that's being lost on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And so Judge Goodman, it needs to look at this situation and make bail on this charge and this charge alone.
Yep.
Now there's the new charges, which of course there's going to be lots of bail and things.
Yeah.
And this guy's not going to get out because he went out and did bad things while he was out on bond.
Yep.
But
So he'll lose that bond. Like that bond gets rescinded, so that amount will restack in.
Right.
Then the new stuff will go on top of it.
Right.
And I don't know if that same bail agent would probably bail him out again or not, but it just keeps getting up, and that's another common thing you see.
well, he's a risk now because of what he's doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was caught with a whole bunch of meth, that tells you everything you need to know. This guy, he's got an issue, and where's he getting his money to post the bond?
Yep.
Right? You've got to think that it's from illegal sources because it looks to me like he's out there trying to score meth.
Yeah.
Right? And, if you've got that situation, you don't care about law enforcement, you don't care about safety of community, you're out trying to score your drugs.
Well, not only that too, but I mean, the whole town's talking about you, right? You're one of the most popular cases, the most popular people that just got released in Las Vegas on bail, and you go straight back to doing the stuff that got you in jail. It's crazy. I mean, that's kind of the person that, for me, like, I'm not too judgmental on people, but you're so they say, you're pretty hot right now.
Right.
And you didn't even go through like a cooling off period. You just went straight back to what you were doing and went right back in.
So the way I say that, or I see this is the sheriff actually did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was elected to a position. He's got certain powers and authorities, and he exercised those powers appropriately.
Yeah.
The judge also did the right thing with the restrictions that have been given to him by the Nevada Supreme Court with bail. He set the maximum bail he could probably do under the Constitution, under the restriction of the Nevada Supreme Court. And he tried to assign this defendant to the most restrictive monitoring, which is Metro's monitoring.
Yeah.
The irony of this whole thing is because Metro said no, the district court then put him on the less restrictive monitoring of the court system that doesn't have an army of police officers.
Yeah.
And the community is less safe because Metro wouldn't put him on their program. The community would have been much safer if Metro would have put him on the program.
And one of the big things that came up in the chat before we end this is, going back to that bail amount, it's not Judge Goodman's opinion, right? The dollar amount. It's not that he said this is, it's set, right? Like it's due to the Supreme Court decisions. That's the max that he could do, right?
Right.
Based on that situation for that individual.
I'm looking at it and saying he's trying to follow the Supreme Court's decision. Let's say he gave $200,000 bail.
Yeah.
Okay. If you just keep on giving people $200,000 bail and you've got a presumption of innocence, well, now you're infringing on constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Right. You have to make it attainable, and that's what the Nevada Supreme Court said. Right.
Yeah, I've seen bail, like in California, this would have been a multi-million-dollar, bail situation.
You can't do that in Nevada.
Yeah, and you can't, and that's the good thing.
Right, and you have to judge it based on that particular charge. The sheriff, his reasons for not accepting him into the program and saying, this community isn't protected. It's sound, but it's based on other cases.
Yeah.
It's based on cases from years ago, right? Those aren't the cases that are in front of Judge Goodman.
Yeah.
And if I want a presumption of innocence, right? When I go before Judge Goodman, right? And if we take it away from this defendant, then what's to stop people from taking away from you or me or anybody else out there in internet land?
And that's the part where it gets...
Right. So everybody did the right thing here. It's just that I think the communication could have been a lot better, right? And yeah, I don't see Judge Goodman doing anything wrong. He's just working within the restrictions he has.
Right. Well, you guys heard it. Just calm down. All right. It's, and then meanwhile, the guy's back in jail. So everybody got what they wanted anyway. So, except for the guy in jail. Right.
But another thing Metro could have done is could have accepted him into the program and then could have nitpicked the house. Because when you're in house arrest and you're in that high level monitoring, you go to the house and you get to look and say, hey, wait a second, is this the correct environment?
Yeah.
However this is. They could have accepted him into the program and then just been very strict within the parameters, and he would have remained in jail.
That's what I was saying earlier.
So he could have done that.
I've seen a lot of people get to that point and then fail. There's another, felon or someone on probation or parole or something else going on in the house, or, the house is,
shared by other drug users.
I saw one guy get denied once because there was a history of 911 calls to that house.
Okay.
Not with our guy, with someone else. So based on the house, again, they could have just said, got to that point. But
if I was Metro's counsel, that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
I would have told him, look, you have the authority to do this, but you also have the authority to do this right.
Yeah.
Right. So accept him into the program and then go through and then don't release him because there isn't a place. Now, at that point, you can go to the judge and say, Judge, as soon as he finds, a suitable place to live that we can monitor him, then we'll release him. And I don't think the judge would have had any problem with that.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Thanks for clarifying that. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.